We want this to be an enjoyable experience for you, or at least one you don't despise. Hello again team, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin, and today we're going to be talking about how to keep up with your bullet journal. How to make sure that you're being consistent with your use of it, to make sure that the things that matter to you are being recorded and filled out. I won't be setting up any spreads today, but for some of the points I'm going to talk about, I'll show you some of the related pages from my current and past journals. The first tip I have for helping you to keep up with your journal is to identify why you want to have one in the first place. Whether it's because you want to help keep yourself more organized, or if you want to record your progress towards your goals, or maybe if it's something to do with memory keeping so that you can look back on this time in years to come. Getting reflective with why you actually want to do this can help you see its importance, and in turn make keeping up with your journal a priority. For some of us, making a list of our whys may actually help us see that some of the things we're putting into our journal, some of the things we're spending heaps of time and mental energy on, aren't actually necessary for what we want our journals to do for us. For me personally, this was particularly noticeable with my meal logging. For a while, I was finding that month after month, I just was not filling it in. I'd wanted my meal log to help motivate me to eat better, but I certainly wasn't doing that, and then filling in my meal log was just a mentally draining chore. This is why I ended up cutting it from my journal for a while before bringing it back in July this year. This brings me to the second tip which I have for you, which is to make it fun. Nobody wants to do things they don't enjoy, so why would it be any different for using your bullet journal? Making the process of bullet journaling enjoyable will make you way more likely to stick with it. For me personally, bullet journaling is one of my creative outlets, so I enjoy making and using spreads that, at least I feel, look good. Spreads that I don't like the look of are way less likely to get any use from me. So this is something that I'm mindful of when setting up new pages. One of the most enjoyable things about my journal are my collections pages. This was something that I recently realized, so now I'm looking at more of the different collections I can put into my journal, so that it's not just a glorified to-do list, and more of a snapshot of myself from the time that I was using it. Whatever makes your journal fun for you to use is a great way to make sure that you stick with it. The third tip is to make it a habit. The more consistent you are in doing something, the more likely you are to continue doing that something. This shouldn't come as a surprise for anyone, but this totally holds true for your bullet journal. Whether it be as strict a habit as having very specific times of the day that you jump into your journal and write things down and check things off, or even if it's a little bit more loose in that you just try and get into your journal once a day at any point. Doing this consistently will 1. Help you make sure that you don't fall behind in filling out trackers and getting your tasks down onto paper. And 2, it will eventually grow into a habit that you don't have to work quite as much on to keep consistent. One of the ways that I've tried previously to help myself grow that habit is by literally putting bullet journal on my monthly habit tracker. Filling out a habit tracker isn't necessarily motivating for everyone, but personally I have found it to be useful, for if nothing else then as a reminder to check in with it. My fourth tip is to make your journal yours. Instagram and Pinterest are awesome places for inspiration, but please remember to treat them as such. A spread that works well for one person may not work as well for you. A lot of the time, we need to take these ideas from others and tweak them so that they can have the best possible use for us. Of course, a disclaimer for this though. Some spread ideas that you find on Instagram and Pinterest will be exactly what you need. So I'm not saying that every single thing you create needs to be original or changed, but I do recommend that you remember that some layouts will need a bit of tweaking to make them right for you. Similarly, there are a lot of different spreads out there that you might just not find useful at all. For instance, I have a couple of times tried to use a time tracker in my journal. I loved the idea of it, and I'd seen some really cool ones that other journalists had done, so I was really excited to try them out for myself. They just did not get filled in, or if they did, I can say with 5,000% certainty that the information on them is a guesstimate at best. These spreads, although kinda interesting to look at after the fact, just don't really fit into my personal reasons for bullet journaling, so I didn't really feel much of an inclination to fill them up. Thus, in my more recent monthly setups, they've gotten the chop. Making sure that your journal works for you and the spreads in it are the ones you're actually going to use really helps to make sure that you keep up with your journal. The fifth tip is to kiss, or keep it simple, silly. The less challenging it is for you to keep up with your journal, the more likely you are to do it. Elaborate spreads and trackers are super lovely to look at, but they can be really time-consuming to set up and fill in. Along with how elaborate the spreads are, the sheer number can be a turn-off as well. Especially when you're first starting out with bullet journaling, when the excitement is new and you've gotten your first journal and all of your pens, there's a tendency for people to want to try all the things, which in turn leads to a lot of time setting up a multitude of different spreads that in the end might not actually get used. A lot of the pages we set up in our journals have to be maintained in one way or another. Filling out trackers, or gratitude logs, or meal logs, or sleep trackers, collections related to TV shows, or movies, or books. Each of these pages requires time beyond just the initial setup. We're busy people, and sometimes spending the time necessary to fill all those up just isn't possible. If your spreads are complicated or take a lot of time to fill in, then the task of having to do that can become really daunting, which leads us to not keeping up with our journal. This is why my suggestion is, if you're finding keeping up with your journal to be a struggle, just check in and see if it's the number of pages or the complexity of the spreads that you're making that's contributing to that. On the flip side though, my sixth tip is to try something new. If you're anything like me, I can get really bored if I'm using the same style of spreads over and over again. For some of my layouts, I totally don't mind that they are similar month to month. But for my weekly layouts in particular, I do enjoy trying new things. If boredom is part of the reason you're having difficulty keeping up with your journal, try a new style of spread. It could be a really easy fix. Changing your monthly log from a list layout to a calendar layout, or introducing a novel tracker, like, I don't know, how many dogs you saw each day. Introducing either new ways to track things, or different things to log or record, or using different spread layouts, anything that you can use to make your journal feel fresh and re-motivate you to get back into it. My seventh tip is to stop putting so much pressure on yourself though. My journals are full of half-finished and neglected pages, and you know what? That's okay. An issue for a lot of people is that spreads and layouts that don't end up getting used can kind of make us feel like we've failed in a way. We had all these good intentions to use all these layouts, but now we just have a bunch of half-finished pages. I super love the look of a full spread, like a weekly that all of the space has been used to record my tasks and events, or a full habit tracker. These pages give me so much joy. What doesn't give me joy are spreads that I haven't finished, or that I got lazy with. For a long time, I would push myself to go back and fill these in, even if it sucked up the enjoyment of my journaling time. I needed to have that full page aesthetic. Going back to tip 2, you are way less likely to do things you don't find enjoyable. So if getting into your journal and finishing off or filling in a bunch of stuff from the last day, or week, or month, if it feels too daunting, or if it doesn't bring you enjoyment, give yourself a break and just don't do it. It is not the end of the world, and if you continue to push yourself like that, there's a pretty high chance that you'll end up quitting bullet journaling for good. We want this to be an enjoyable experience for you, or at least one you don't despise. Give yourself a chance to find your groove with it. Find the spreads and layouts that do work for you. Cut out the ones that don't. The easiest way to keep up with bullet journaling is knowing which elements to let go of, so that you can keep up with the ones that do matter and the ones that you do enjoy. I would love to know what tips you guys have for keeping up with your journal. Another final tip from me would be that there's power in good equipment. Find a journal with paper you love using, or a pen that you love the color or the flow of. If you guys have any tips and you want to share with us, please do leave them in the comments section below. And if you liked today's video, please do give it a big thumbs up. If you wanted to see more from me, feel free to go check out one of my other videos. But until next time, bye!